My name is Claire Whitman. I am 35 years old, a divorced mother of two, a CPA, and a woman who spent most of her life mistaking endurance for love. Last Thanksgiving, my mother locked me and my two children out of her house in the middle of a blizzard. At least, she thought it was her house. That was the part she did not know. She stood in the doorway wearing a burgundy velvet dress and pearl earrings, her cheeks flushed from wine and rage, screaming that I had ruined Thanksgiving, ruined the family, ruined everything the way I always did. Behind her, the dining room glowed gold from candles and crystal. Silverware gleamed. A half-carved turkey sat cooling on a platter. My younger sister, Sabrina, stood near the staircase, with one hand pressed dramatically against her chest, like I had personally staged a tragedy for her entertainment. Her husband, Darius, leaned against the wall behind my mother, smiling at me with the slow, satisfied look of a man who believed he had finally won. My son Noah was 8 years old. He had one arm around his little sister, Lily, who was 6 and shaking so hard, her teeth clicked together. Their coats were in the snow because my mother had ripped them from the hall closet and thrown them onto the porch like trash. Lily was wearing a green holiday dress with tiny gold buttons down the front. Noah had on the navy sweater I had ironed that morning because I still thought we were going to a normal family dinner. Snow stuck to their hair and eyelashes. The porch boards were slick with ice. The wind came sideways, sharp enough to burn. "Get off my property!" my mother screamed. I remember looking at her and thinking, for the first time in my life, that she looked small. Not physically. Margot Bellamy had never looked small physically. She knew how to fill a doorway, a room, a silence. She knew how to make everyone orbit her mood, but standing there with snow flying around her and my children trembling beside me, she looked like a woman made entirely of performance. Expensive dress, perfect lipstick, empty heart. "Mom," I said, and my voice did not sound like mine. "Don't do this to the kids." She looked at Noah, she looked at Lily, she looked at me, and she said, "I do not care." That sentence did something to me. It did not break me. I had already been broken by her in smaller ways for years. It did something colder than breaking. It closed a door inside me that had been left open too long. Darius smiled wider. He had been waiting for me to cry or to beg or apologize. He wanted the scene to prove I was unstable, jealous, bitter, everything he had been calling me for months. When I bent down to pick Lily's coat out of the snow, he mouthed 2 words from behind my mother's shoulder. "You lost." I looked at him, then at the brass handle on the front door, then at the porch light shining above my mother's head. My fingers were numb as I wrapped Lily's coat around her shoulders and zipped Noah's jacket up to his chin. My hands were shaking, but my face was calm. That was always the thing my family hated most about me. When they wanted me to fall apart, I got quiet. They called me a calculator. That was their mistake. I calculated everything. Months earlier, my mother had begged me to help her save that same house from a $36,000 property tax disaster. She cried about legacy. She cried about family. She cried about how my father, who had been dead for 12 years, would be humiliated if the county took the Bellamy home on Hawthorne Lane. She made it sound like I was the only thing standing between our family and public disgrace. What she believed was that I had paid the money as another sacrifice, another gift, another silent payment from the daughter she had trained to rescue everyone and ask for nothing. But I had not gifted her $36,000. My LLC had purchased the tax lien. There had been a redemption period. There had been notices. There had been deadlines. There had been a court order. And by the time my mother threw my children into the snow, the deed had already been recorded. She had just thrown the legal owner off her own porch. I did not tell her that night. I did not warn Darius. I did not correct Sabrina when she smiled like she had finally been crowned queen of a collapsing kingdom. I loaded my children into the car. I buckled them in with fingers I could barely feel. I turned the heat up as high as it would go, and while my mother's house disappeared behind the wall of snow in my rearview mirror, I understood something that I should have understood years earlier. Forgiveness without boundaries is just permission. Before I tell you what happened when I came back for that house, you need to understand why my mother thought she could treat me like that in the first place. The Bellamy house on Hawthorne Lane was always more of a stage than a home. From the street, it looked like old money, or at least the idea of old money that people like my mother worshipped. It was a large brick colonial with white columns, black shutters, tall windows, a circular driveway, and two stone planters by the front steps that Margot kept filled according to season. Tulips in spring, hydrangeas in summer, bronze mums in fall, white birch branches and red berries in winter. She cared deeply about those planters because neighbors could see them. Inside, things were different. The house smelled like lemon polish and panic. My mother kept the crystal cabinet dusted, but ignored the brown water stains spreading across the ceiling near the back hallway. She replaced the dining room curtains with custom silk panels, while a bathroom upstairs had a toilet that ran all night. She paid Oak Ridge Country Club dues before she paid the gas bill. She bought imported candles for the foyer, while final notices sat unopened in a drawer beneath old copies of Southern Living. That was Margot Bellamy's entire philosophy. If the visible part sparkled, the rot behind it did not matter. When I was little, I thought the house was beautiful. I thought the chandelier in the dining room was magic. I thought my mother's polished silver trays meant we were safe. It took me years to realize that in my family, appearances were not decoration. They were religion. My mother would rather freeze in a beautiful room than admit she could not afford heat. I was the oldest daughter, which in my family meant I was born already owing everyone something. My younger sister, Sabrina, came along 4 years after me, and from the beginning, our roles were assigned so early that I cannot remember a time before them. Sabrina was the pretty one. I was the practical one. That sounds harmless until you understand what it really meant. Pretty meant delicate, deserving, protected. Practical meant useful, durable, and available for sacrifice. If Sabrina cried, my mother rushed to hold her. If I cried, my mother told me I was being dramatic. If Sabrina failed a math test, the teacher had not explained it properly. If I got an A minus, Margot asked why it was not an A. If Sabrina spilled juice on a white rug, she was adorable. If I forgot to switch laundry, I was selfish. My father was quieter than my mother, but quiet did not mean innocent. He avoided conflict by letting her do whatever she wanted. He patted my shoulder sometimes, told me I was strong, told me I knew how my mother got. I used to think that was kindness. Now I understand it was surrender. He left me alone in rooms where an adult should have stood beside me. By the time I was 10, I knew how to read overdue bills. By 12, I knew which creditors called before dinner and which ones called after. By 13, I knew that when my mother's voice got sweet on the phone, she was lying to someone about when a payment would clear. She never explained these things to Sabrina. Sabrina was kept pure from reality. I was expected to understand it, absorb it, and never embarrass the family by mentioning it. Margot taught me that family meant silence. She did not say it that plainly, of course. She said things like, "We don't air dirty laundry," and "Your sister is sensitive, and you're old enough to understand." I was always old enough to understand the parts that hurt me. Sabrina was never old enough to be responsible for the parts that helped her. I did well in school because school was the only place where work turned into results. At home, effort vanished into obligation. If I got praise, it was usually because my competence benefited someone else. Claire is so responsible, Margot would tell her friends, smiling across a luncheon table. I don't know what I'd do without her. Then she would send me to balance her checkbook or call the cable company because she had forgotten to pay again and did not want to be embarrassed. I learned numbers because numbers did not lie to me. They did not smile and steal. They did not call theft sacrifice. They did not tell one daughter she was precious and the other she was necessary. Numbers were clean. If something did not add up, there was a reason. My mother hated that. She liked emotion when she could weaponize it. She liked confusion because confusion gave her room to rewrite reality. A clear ledger was a threat to her entire way of life. The first time I understood that my mother did not see my money as mine, I was 17. I had been saving for college since my freshman year of high school. I worked before school at a bakery 3 mornings a week, wiping counters and boxing muffins while other kids were still asleep. After school, I tutored middle school students in math. On weekends, I filed papers at a local insurance office where the owner paid me under the table because I was fast and never complained. Every dollar I could spare went into an account with my name on it. That account represented freedom. I would log into it late at night and stare at the balance like it was a window. I did not have enough for everything, not even close. But it was mine. It was proof that if I worked hard enough and planned carefully enough, I could leave Hawthorne Lane without owing my mother gratitude for the exit. Sabrina got engaged that same year to a man she would later divorce before she met Darius. She was 21 and had never paid a bill in her life. The wedding became my mother's obsession, not Sabrina's marriage. The wedding, the photographs, the ballroom, the flowers, the way people would talk when they walked in and saw the Bellamy's had not fallen. I remember sitting at the kitchen table while my mother flipped through bridal magazines, circling centerpieces we could not afford. "Your sister deserves one beautiful day," she said. I did not argue. I had learned that any practical question about money would be treated like cruelty. I just kept working, kept saving, kept checking my account. Then, one Friday afternoon in April, my debit card declined at a gas station. I thought it was a mistake. I was embarrassed, standing there with a line behind me and my old Honda sitting at pump 4. I paid with cash from my backpack and drove home shaking. I opened my laptop on my bedroom floor and logged into my bank account. The balance was almost zero. At first, I could not process what I was seeing. I clicked through the transaction history with a strange calm, like if I moved slowly enough, the numbers might rearrange themselves into something that made sense. There were withdrawals I had not made, transfers I had not authorized, a cashier's check. I went downstairs and found my mother in the dining room, arranging sample ribbons beside a stack of wedding invoices. "What happened to my college money?" I asked. She did not even look surprised. That is the part I remember most. Not guilt, not fear, not even anger, just irritation that I had interrupted her. "Lower your voice," she said. "What happened to my money?" She sighed like I was being childish. "We needed it." "For what?" She looked at me then, her eyes narrowing. "Your sister's wedding." I felt the room tilt. "You took my college fund for Sabrina's wedding?" "Do not call it that." What else would I call it? "A family contribution." I remember laughing once. Just one hard, ugly sound, because my brain could not find anywhere else for the pain to go. "I didn't contribute. You stole it." Her face changed. That was the first time I saw what happened when I named something correctly. Margot Bellamy hated accurate language. She could survive anything except being described. "How dare you," she said. "You forged my signature." She stood, slow and dramatic. "Your sister needed help. You are smart. You will manage." I worked for that money, and Sabrina has been under enormous stress. For flowers? For a ballroom? For her future, my mother snapped. You think everything is about you because you're jealous. Sabrina is starting a life. You'll get scholarships, you'll get loans, you always land on your feet. That became one of her favorite lines. You always land on your feet. It sounds like praise until you realize it is an excuse to push someone. I did take loans. I did work through college. I did survive. But survival is not proof that harm was acceptable. I carried trays in a campus dining hall. I tutored accounting students who had parents paying full tuition. I slept 4 hours a night during tax season internships. I wore shoes with cardboard inside the soles because I could not afford new ones. Sabrina's wedding photographs were displayed on the piano for years. My mother called them priceless. She was right. They cost me a future I had tried to buy for myself. After college, I built my life the only way I trusted, carefully. I became a CPA, then a financial consultant. I worked for 2 firms before opening my own small office. I specialized in helping small business owners untangle messy books, tax problems, payroll disasters, and the kind of financial chaos people create when they are too ashamed to ask for help early. I was good at it because I understood shame. I understood unopened envelopes. I understood the terror of numbers you avoid until they grow teeth. Clients trusted me because I did not panic. I could sit across from someone whose business was 6 weeks from collapse and say, okay, let's start with what is true. That sentence saved more people than false comfort ever could. My family mocked the same qualities my clients paid for. Margot called me rigid. Sabrina said I was boring. Later, Darius would call me a glorified calculator, as if calculation was not the only reason half of them had electricity. I married in my late 20s. I will not pretend my divorce was entirely my ex-husband's fault. We were 2 exhausted people who did not know how to be gentle with each other when life became difficult. But when the marriage ended, I did what I always did. I made a plan. I kept the apartment. I adjusted the budget. I showed up for Noah and Lily. I cried in the shower where they could not hear me, then packed lunches with notes inside because children should not have to become emotional accountants for their parents. My mother treated my divorce like a personal embarrassment. Well, she said the first time I told her, you have always been hard to live with. I remember standing in her kitchen holding Lily on my hip while Noah played with wooden blocks near the breakfast nook. My marriage had just ended. I was sleeping 3 hours a night. I wanted my mother to hug me. I wanted, foolishly, for her to become a different woman because I was finally in enough pain to deserve softness. Instead, she adjusted a vase of white roses and said, "Men need to feel respected, Claire, not audited." That was Margot. She could turn any wound into evidence against you. Still, I kept going to Hawthorne Lane. I brought the children for Sunday dinners. I let them decorate cookies in her kitchen at Christmas. I told myself they deserved a grandmother. I told myself limited contact was better than no family. I told myself I was strong enough to absorb Margot in small doses. That is another lie people like me tell ourselves. We call it strength when we mean self-abandonment. Around that time, my mother's finances got worse. My father had left her the house, but not enough liquid money to maintain it. She refused to downsize because selling Hawthorne Lane would mean admitting what everyone else already suspected. The Bellamy name had more shine than substance. Her credit cards were maxed. Her credit score was wrecked. She rotated bills like a shell game. Pay gas, delay water, pay club dues, ignore taxes, pay the florist, dodge insurance. One winter, the heat almost got shut off the week Noah and Lily were supposed to spend a Saturday with her. I found out because the utility company called me by mistake after my mother listed me as an emergency contact without telling me. I should have let the consequences land then. Instead, I transferred the gas account into my name, then the electric, then the water, not all at once. Margot was very good at making each emergency sound isolated. A temporary issue, a bank error, a misunderstanding. She cried about the children not being able to visit a cold house. She promised reimbursement. She reimbursed me for 2 months. Then nothing. When I asked, she said, "Oh, Claire, don't be so transactional. That is what family does. That is what family does." I cannot tell you how much money has been stolen under that sentence. By the time Darius Cole entered our lives, I had already been paying to keep my mother's illusion warm for years. Darius arrived wearing confidence like a rented tuxedo. Sabrina met him at a charity wine auction she attended with Margot, using tickets neither of them should have bought. He was handsome in a polished showroom way. Perfect beard, bright smile, watch too large for his wrist, shoes that looked expensive from across a room, but somehow too shiny up close. He told everyone he was in real estate, not a realtor, not a developer, not a contractor, real estate. He used the phrase the way some people use smoke bombs. He talked about acquisitions, private investors, distressed assets, off-market opportunities, syndication, luxury redevelopment, and capital stacks. He said liquidity constantly. He drove a leased black Mercedes when he first met Sabrina, then later a Tesla he claimed was a business asset. He wore suits to casual dinners and took calls in the middle of conversations so everyone would know he was important. Margot adored him immediately. To my mother, Darius looked like proof that Sabrina had married up. He was loud, masculine, flashy, and willing to compliment Margot's taste in front of people. That was enough. Sabrina became unbearable around him. She had always been spoiled, but Darius gave her spoiledness a vocabulary. Suddenly, she was talking about generational wealth and legacy and feminine energy. She told me one afternoon, while I was cutting Lily's grapes in half at my mother's kitchen island, that I was too masculine because I worried about money. "I don't worry about money," I said. "I manage it." She smiled sadly, like I had confessed to a disease. "That's what I mean." Darius did not like me. I knew it from the first dinner. He performed well for people who nodded. I asked follow-up questions. When he said he was closing on a downtown commercial property, I asked which title company he was using. When he said he had investors from Chicago, I asked whether he had formed a fund or was doing single asset raises. When he said returns were guaranteed, I looked at Sabrina and said, "No legitimate investment uses that word casually." He laughed every time, but his eyes hardened. "Claire likes to interrogate people," he told the table. "No," I said. "I like words to mean things." After that, he started calling me the accountant even though he knew I owned a consulting firm. Then the calculator. Then, once, after 2 glasses of whiskey, he said I was the kind of woman who made men want to hide offshore accounts. My mother laughed. That was always the final measurement of cruelty in our family. If Margot laughed, everyone else was allowed to. The $2,500 contractor charge happened 6 months before Thanksgiving. Darius had asked for a referral to a contractor who handled small commercial renovations. I gave him the name of someone my firm had used. Somehow, and I still believe this was intentional, he had materials charged to my business account at a supply company where we had a line of credit. When my office manager flagged it, I called Darius. "Oh yeah," he said casually. "That got mixed up. I'll circle back." "Circle back with payment by Friday," he chuckled. "It's $2,500, Claire." "Yes," I said. "That is the amount you owe. Your family." "My business account is not family." He did not pay Friday, or the next Friday, or the Friday after that. When I brought it up to Sabrina, she said Darius was under pressure with a major deal, and I should stop being petty. When I mentioned it to Margot, she said successful men often had complicated cash flow, and I would not understand because I was not entrepreneurial. I own a business, but in my family, reality mattered less than hierarchy. Darius was a man performing wealth, so he was visionary. I was a woman maintaining stability, so I was difficult. By the time Thanksgiving came, I had every reason not to go. I went anyway. That is the honest part I hate admitting. I did not walk into Hawthorne Lane innocent. I knew who they were. I knew how dinner would feel. I knew my mother would find some way to praise Sabrina and diminish me. I knew Darius would brag. I knew I would leave tired. But I wanted Noah and Lily to have family traditions. I wanted them to have turkey at a long table and cousins someday, and a grandmother who saved drawings on the refrigerator. I wanted something so ordinary it made me stupid. So I made mashed potatoes in the morning, dressed the kids carefully, and drove through the first waves of snow toward Hawthorne Lane. The storm had been predicted, but not like that. By 3 in the afternoon, the sky was a heavy gray lid. Snow gathered along the edges of the road. Noah sat in the back seat reading a graphic novel. Lily hummed to herself and kept asking if Grandma would have pumpkin pie. "She usually does," I said. "Will Aunt Sabrina be there?" "Yes." "Will Uncle Darius talk about his car again?" Noah asked without looking up. I almost laughed. "Probably. He said it goes 0 to 60 in something. 3.1 seconds, Lily announced. Noah looked offended. "Why do you remember that?" "Because he said it 11 times. That was my children. Observant in ways I wished they did not need to be. When we pulled into the circular driveway, Sabrina and Darius had not arrived yet, which meant my mother was irritated. Margot opened the front door before I could knock. She looked past me first, checking the driveway for a better entrance. "Oh," she said, "you're early. You said 3:30. I said around 3:30. That was how it began. Not with screaming, with correction. She kissed Noah and Lily on the tops of their heads, careful not to smudge her lipstick. Then her eyes moved over me. "That coat does nothing for you," she said. "Happy Thanksgiving, Mom. And your hair. Did you come straight from work?" "It's a holiday." "That does not answer the question." Lily pressed closer to my leg. I put a hand on her shoulder and stepped inside. The house looked beautiful. I will give my mother that. It always looked best when she was closest to disaster. The dining room table was set with gold-rimmed china, crystal glasses, folded linen napkins, and candles in tall brass holders. The centerpiece was absurd. All white roses and eucalyptus and tiny pears dusted with glitter. The turkey had been catered because Margot preferred the smell of cooking to the labor of it. There were pies lined up on the sideboard and a silver ice bucket chilling wine she could not afford. Every visible surface said prosperity. Every drawer probably contained a warning notice. "Shoes!" Margot said sharply when Noah stepped onto the rug. He froze. "Sorry, Grandma." "It's fine," I said, kneeling to help him. "We'll put them by the door." Margot watched me with the faint displeasure she always had when I parented gently in front of her. Kindness made her suspicious. It suggested there were options she had not chosen. Sabrina arrived 40 minutes late in a cream silk dress entirely wrong for the weather and entirely right for being admired indoors. Darius arrived behind her in a black Tesla that looked dramatic against the snow. He parked directly in front of the house instead of along the curve of the driveway, blocking half the entrance. Because Darius never entered anywhere without creating inconvenience, Margot lit up. "There she is," she said, sweeping past me. "My beautiful girl." Sabrina laughed and turned so Margot could see the dress. "Do you love it? You look like a dream." I looked down at Lily's green dress, which my mother had not noticed except to say the buttons looked a little crooked. Darius came in shaking snow from his coat like he had conquered the elements. "Roads are getting ugly. Good thing the Tesla handles like a beast." Noah glanced at me from the staircase. I widened my eyes slightly, and he looked down to hide a smile. Dinner started with Margot's usual performance of gratitude. She stood at the head of the table, one hand on the back of her chair, and spoke about family legacy, resilience, blessings, and how proud she was that we could still gather in this house. with all its memories. She looked at Sabrina when she said legacy. She looked at Darius when she said future. She did not look at me until she said resilience. Then we sat down and Darius took over. He talked about the Tesla before the soup was served. He said the acceleration was insane. He said he could write off part of the lease because it was used for business. He said he was considering upgrading once his next deal closed. Then he moved to the supposed downtown commercial property, which grew larger every time he described it. In September, it had been a small mixed-use building. By Thanksgiving, it had become a strategic urban redevelopment play. He said investors were circling. He said he had access to capital most people could not understand. He said he and Sabrina were thinking about the Maldives in February because, and I quote, "When your cash position is strong, you have to enjoy life." Margot beamed like he had just announced a Nobel Prize. Sabrina touched his arm and said, "Darius just thinks bigger than most people." I kept cutting Lily's turkey into smaller pieces. Then Darius made his mistake. He looked across the table at me and said, "You know, Claire, you should let me look at your office lease sometime. I could probably negotiate you into a better space. You're good with spreadsheets, but real estate takes vision." I set down my fork. The table did not go silent yet, but something in the air shifted. No one noticed. His eyes flicked from me to Darius. I said, "Since your cash position is so strong, when should my office expect repayment for the $2,500 contractor charge?" That did it. Silence dropped so completely I could hear the candle flame moving. Darius blinked once. Then he smiled, slow and false. "Are you serious?" "Yes. At Thanksgiving dinner, you made it the place when you spent 10 minutes telling us how much cash you had." Sabrina inhaled sharply. "Claire." I did not look at her. I kept my eyes on Darius. He leaned back in his chair. That was a business mix-up. It was a charge to my company account. And I said I'd handle it. "You said you would circle back. That was 6 months ago." Margot placed her wine glass down with enough force that the stem clicked against the china. "Claire, this is not appropriate." "What part?" I asked. "The unpaid invoice or mentioning it?" Darius laughed, but it had no humor in it. "This is your problem. You don't understand how real wealth works. You think every dollar has to be pinned down in a little box. I understand that real entrepreneurs pay their vendors." His face hardened. There it was. The line. The one that punctured the performance. Darius could survive being questioned. He could not survive being accurately reduced. He leaned forward. "You know, Sabrina warned me you were like this." "Like what?" "Bitter. Controlling. Always counting other people's money because you don't know how to enjoy your own life." Noah's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. I kept my voice level. "You spent my company's money. That makes it mine to count." Darius looked at my mother, inviting her in. "This is why men don't stay with women like her." The room changed. Lily did not understand the sentence, but she understood the tone. Her little hand found my sleeve under the table. My mother did not defend me. Of course she did not. She took a sip of wine. Darius continued, encouraged by the silence. "Always auditing. Always correcting. Always acting like being cold is the same thing as being smart. Sabrina knows how to support a real man. She doesn't sit around waving petty invoices at family." I should have left then. I know that now. The moment someone uses your divorce as entertainment at a holiday table in front of your children, the meal is over. But I had spent too many years being trained to remain composed while people crossed lines and then accused me of making things awkward if I objected. So I said, "A real man does not need his wife's sister to subsidize him." Sabrina stood so fast her chair scraped the floor. "You are disgusting!" Margot slammed her palm on the table. "Enough!" But she was looking at me, not Darius, me. "Claire," she said, voice trembling with theatrical outrage, "you will apologize." "No." Her eyebrows lifted. She was not used to hearing that word from me in her house. "Excuse me?" I said no. Sabrina laughed bitterly. "Of course, because Claire is always the victim. I turned to her. You want to talk about victims? Mom stole my college fund to pay for your first wedding. Margot's face went white, then red. Do not start that again. You forged my signature. I did what I had to do for this family. You took money I earned and gave it to Sabrina for flowers in a ballroom. Sabrina's mouth twisted. I knew you were still jealous. Jealous? I repeated. Of what? A marriage that lasted 18 months? Darius made a low sound. Watch your mouth. I looked at him. Or what? You'll charge another bill to my company? Margot stood. You are hateful. No, I said. I am accurate. You just hate accuracy. That was the moment everything blew apart. My mother started crying, but not real tears. Margot could summon moisture when an audience required it. She pressed a hand to her chest. On Thanksgiving, in my home, after everything I have done for you. I almost smiled because the sentence was so perfectly her. Everything she had done to me became everything she had done for me if enough time passed. You mean after stealing from me? I asked. After using my accounts to keep your utilities on? After letting Darius insult me in front of my kids? Family does not nickel and dime family, she snapped. Theft is not family. The word landed hard. Margot looked genuinely shocked, not because it was false, but because I had said it at her table. Noah pushed his chair back slightly. Mom? That small voice cut through me. I looked at him, then at Lily. Noah's face was tight, trying to be older than he was. Lily's eyes were glossy. Her hand was still wrapped in my sleeve. They were watching adults turn cruelty into tradition. They were learning what I had learned too early. That family could be a room where everyone saw you bleeding and corrected your tone. Something inside me shifted. I put my napkin on the table. Kids, get your coats. Margot's head snapped toward me. You are not leaving in the middle of dinner. Yes, I said. We are. Sabrina scoffed. Run away. That's what you do when people stop worshiping your martyr act. I ignored her and stood. Darius said, let her go. She can go back to her sad little apartment and count receipts. I helped Lily out of her chair. Noah was already standing, pale and silent. Then my mother said, if you walk out that door, do not expect to come back. I turned. She looked triumphant for a second, like she had finally found a threat large enough. This house, she said, voice rising, will go to Sabrina and Darius. Do you understand me? Not you, not your children. Sabrina deserves it. She respects family. She understands loyalty. You have always been cold and bitter, just like your father said you could be. My father had never said that. Or maybe he had. At that point, it did not matter. Darius smiled. Sabrina lifted her chin. I said, you cannot give what you do not understand. Margot misread the sentence. She thought it was philosophy. It was not. It was legal fact. She moved faster than I expected. She stormed to the hall closet, yanked it open, grabbed our coats, and flung the front door wide. Snow burst into the foyer, swirling across the polished floor. Mom, I said, stop. She threw Noah's coat first. It landed halfway across the porch. Then Lily's, then mine. Lily started crying. Get out, Margot said. Do not do this to the children. I do not care. There are sentences that become timestamps in your life. Before she said it. After she said it. I looked at my mother, really looked at her. Not as the woman I kept hoping she might become. As the woman she was. Then I put my hand on Noah's back, lifted Lily into my arms, and walked into the storm. The door slammed behind us. The deadbolt clicked. For a few seconds, the three of us stood under the porch light while snow blew across our faces. I set Lily down only long enough to grab her coat. The fabric was already wet. Noah tried to pick up mine, but the wind caught it and dragged it toward the steps. He chased it, slipped, and nearly fell. That was the moment rage finally came. Not when Darius insulted me, not when Sabrina called me jealous, not even when my mother brought up the college fund like it was an old misunderstanding. It came when my son slipped on an icy porch, trying to rescue my coat because the adults inside the warm house had decided humiliation mattered more than his safety. I got the coats on them. I wrapped my own around Lily, too, holding her against my body as we hurried to the car. My fingers fumbled with the keys. Noah climbed in without being told. Lily was sobbing openly by then, small hiccuping cries that made my chest hurt. Inside the car, I turned the heat on full blast and locked the doors. Noah stared out the window at the house. The porch light made the snow look like static. "Mom?" he said. I looked back. "Yes, baby?" His voice was barely above a whisper. "Did Grandma stop loving us?" I have answered complex tax questions under audit pressure. I have negotiated with creditors who were ready to destroy businesses. I have explained bankruptcy options to grown men who cried into their hands across from me. Nothing in my life prepared me for that question. I wanted to say no. I wanted to protect him with the soft lie children are given when adults fail them. But the lie would have protected Margot, not Noah. So I took a breath and said, "Grandma made a very bad choice tonight." He looked down. "But listen to me," I said. "I will never choose anyone over you and Lily. Never, not Grandma, not Aunt Sabrina, not anyone." Lily sniffed. "Are we bad?" "No," I said quickly, turning in my seat as far as I could. "No, sweetheart, you are not bad. You did nothing wrong." "Then why did she make us go outside?" "Because she is cruel. Because I was foolish. Because I kept bringing you to a house where love came with teeth." I said, "Because she was angry and she made a wrong choice. But I am taking you home. You are safe with me." It took 40 minutes to drive back to our apartment through the storm. Noah stayed awake, staring silently out the window. Lily fell asleep halfway home, her cheeks still wet. I carried her inside and tucked both children into my bed because neither wanted to sleep alone. Noah curled on one side of Lily, still wearing his sweater. I pulled the comforter over them and stood there listening to their breathing until my own hands stopped shaking. Then I went into the kitchen, closed the door halfway, and called Ethan Park. Ethan was my real estate attorney. Calm, careful, allergic to drama. I had known him for years through client referrals, and he had helped me structure my LLC properly back when I first opened my consulting firm. When my mother's tax disaster surfaced in February, Ethan was the first person I called before I spent $1. He answered on the fourth ring, his voice rough with sleep or turkey or both. "Claire, I'm sorry to call on Thanksgiving." His tone sharpened slightly. Ethan knew me well enough to know I did not make unnecessary calls. "What happened?" I looked through the kitchen doorway at my children asleep in my bed. Lily's hand was curled around Noah's sleeve. "Was the deed recorded?" There was a pause. Papers rustled, or maybe he was sitting up. "Yes. Final order was signed Monday. Deed recorded yesterday morning." I closed my eyes. Legally, I had known. Ethan's office had emailed confirmation, but I needed to hear his voice say it. "So my LLC owns Hawthorne Lane." "Yes," he said. "Subject to the usual post-judgment procedural items we discussed, but yes. The foreclosure is final. The deed is recorded." I gripped the edge of the counter. Ethan waited a second. "Claire, why are you asking tonight?" I could have told him everything. The dinner, the insults, the coats in the snow, my mother saying she did not care. But if I started, I was afraid I would crack, and I did not want to crack yet. "She threw us out," I said. "In the storm. The kids, too." The silence on the line changed. When Ethan spoke again, his voice was lower. "Are Noah and Lily safe?" "Yes. They're asleep." "And you?" I looked down at my wet shoes, the puddle forming on the kitchen tile, my hands red from cold. "I'm done." He exhaled slowly. "I need to ask this carefully. Are you sure you want to proceed against your mother?" I almost laughed. Proceed. Such a clean word, as if the proceeding had not started when she forged my signature at 17. as if it had not continued every time she treated my bank account like a family utility. As if the legal case was the harsh part, not the decades before it. Yes, I said, I'm sure. To understand what that meant, you need to know what happened in February. My mother called me on a Tuesday morning while I was reviewing payroll reports for a medical practice client. I almost ignored the call because Margot rarely called during business hours unless she wanted something. Then she called again and again. On the fourth call, I stepped out of my office and answered. Claire, she said, breathless, I need you to come over. I'm working. This is an emergency. With Margot, everything was an emergency once consequences arrived. I asked what happened. She started crying. At first, I could not understand her. There were fragments. County, taxes, mistake, house, your father, legacy. I closed my office door and sat down. Mom, I said, how much? She stopped crying for half a second. That was how I knew the number was bad. How much? I repeated. 36,000, she whispered. I stared at the wall. $36,000 in back property taxes, penalties, fees, and interest. Not one missed payment, not a small oversight, years of avoidance dressed up as surprise. How long have you known? I asked. That is not the point. It is exactly the point. Claire, please. They are threatening foreclosure. They do not threaten foreclosure before sending notices. Silence. How many notices did you ignore? She started crying harder. I could not deal with it. That sentence made me tired in my bones. Margot's entire adult life was built on not dealing with things until someone else had to. She asked me to pay it. Not lend, pay. Of course. She wrapped it in softer language. Help. Rescue. Protect the family legacy. Honor your father. Keep Sabrina from being devastated. Think of the children's memories. She used every emotional lever she had installed in me since childhood. There was a time I would have paid the county directly and hated myself quietly afterward. But by February, I had changed enough to pause. I told her I needed to talk to my attorney. She hated that. Why would you need a lawyer to help your own mother? Because it is $36,000. It is family. That is why I need a lawyer. I called Ethan that afternoon. He listened without interrupting while I explained the taxes, the house, my mother's history, the utility accounts, the unpaid reimbursements, the way money vanished whenever it entered her hands. When I finished, he said, do not give her the money directly. I wasn't planning to. Good. He explained the tax lien process in plain English. The county had a claim because property taxes were unpaid. Depending on the status and timing, my company could purchase the tax lien certificate. My mother would have a legal redemption period. She could pay the amount due, plus required interest and fees, and keep the property. If she did not redeem, my LLC could move forward with foreclosure. It was not revenge then. Not really. It was protection. I told myself I was giving Margot a structured chance to fix what she had ignored. If she paid it back, fine. If she did not, at least I would not have thrown more money into the fire with no paper trail. Ethan insisted on documentation, notices, certified mail, copies of everything, clean records, no side conversations that change terms, no emotional agreements. Your mother needs to understand this is not a gift, he said. She won't want to understand that. Then we make sure the documents do. Margot signed what she needed to sign because she thought paperwork was a formality, and I was still the same daughter she could bend with guilt later. I sat across from her at Ethan's office while she dabbed her eyes with a tissue and talked about how humiliating it was to involve lawyers. You made it legal when you stopped paying taxes, I said. She looked at Ethan like I had been rude. Ethan looked at his papers. For a few weeks, Margot pretended she was grateful. She called me her lifesaver. She told Sabrina I had finally done something for the family without making it about myself, which was such a perfect Margot sentence that I wrote it down afterward in my notes app under a folder labeled Receipts. Then the notices started. The county sent notices. Ethan's office sent notices. Redemption deadlines were clear. Amounts were clear. Consequences were clear. I know because I have copies of every document. Margot ignored them. She did not call Ethan. She did not call me to discuss a payment plan. She did not challenge anything. She did not ask questions. She shoved envelopes into the same drawer where she kept old invitations and expired coupons for luxury boutiques. Meanwhile, she kept spending. Oak Ridge dues, hair appointments, a new winter coat with fur trim, she described as an investment piece. Lunches with Vivian Cross and Celeste Harrington, women whose friendship depended entirely on shared illusions, a deposit for custom holiday garland for the staircase. Small luxuries, constant and stupid, while a legal countdown ticked under her feet. At one point in June, I asked her if she had opened Ethan's latest letter. She waved me away. "You handled that." "No," I said. "My company purchased the lien. You still have obligations." She made a face. "I cannot listen to tax talk before dinner." That was the thing about warnings. People later claim they never received them, when what they mean is they received them in a form that required maturity. The redemption period expired. No payment, no response, no challenge. Ethan filed the foreclosure action. Even then, I felt sick. Not guilty exactly, but grief has many disguises. I kept thinking she would wake up. I thought a court notice might pierce the fantasy. I thought Margot would call me furious, maybe, or scared, and we would have some awful but honest conversation where she finally admitted she had created this. She did not. She ignored that too. When the final order was signed, I sat in my office staring at the email for 10 minutes. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I felt like I was standing outside my childhood home with a match in one hand and a fire extinguisher in the other, unsure which one made me a better daughter. Then Thanksgiving happened, and my mother made the choice for me. After my call with Ethan, I stood in my kitchen for a long time. My phone buzzed on the counter. Darius. I almost ignored it, but then I saw the preview. "Margot's signing the house over to us next week. You get nothing." A second message came right after. Should have apologized. Then a third. "Enjoy renting forever. I saved screenshots of all three." I did not reply. I looked toward my bedroom where Noah and Lily were sleeping. Lily had kicked one foot out from under the blanket. Noah had curled toward her protectively, like even unconscious he was guarding his sister from the world I had brought them too close to. I whispered, "Keep thinking that." The next Monday, I went to work like normal. That is something people do not understand about controlled revenge. It does not always begin with dramatic music. Sometimes it begins with school lunches, coffee, and an 8:30 client meeting. My office was on the second floor of a renovated brick building downtown, with tall windows, pale wood floors, and a conference room that overlooked a row of maple trees. It was not flashy. It was mine. Every desk, every file cabinet, every software subscription had been paid for with work, not performance. Harper Lynn, my receptionist and office assistant, was 26, sharp as glass, and had the kind of calm face that made rude clients underestimate her once. That morning, she took one look at me and said, "Do I need to reschedule anything?" "No." "Do I need to hurt anyone administratively?" That almost made me smile. "Maybe later." At 10, I met with a bakery owner who needed help restructuring payroll. At 11:30, I reviewed quarterly estimates. At noon, Harper messaged me that Darius Cole was in reception without an appointment. I typed back, "Tell him I am unavailable." She replied, "I did. He says family does not need appointments." Of course he did. 2 minutes later, I heard his voice through the hall. "Ma'am, I'm not waiting for permission to talk to my sister-in-law." Harper said, "Sir, this is a professional office." Then my door opened. Darius walked in wearing a camel coat, leather gloves, and the expression of a man performing authority for an invisible camera. Harper appeared behind him, furious. "I told him you were with a client," she said. I was, in fact, with a client. Mr. Alvarez, who owned a small landscaping company, sat across from my desk with a folder of tax documents on his lap, looking deeply uncomfortable. I stood. "Mr. Alvarez, I'm sorry for the interruption. Harper will move us to the conference room, and I'll waive today's consultation fee." He started to protest. "I insist," I said. Darius glanced at him dismissively. "This will only take a second." "No," I said, looking at my client, "it won't." Harper escorted Mr. Alvarez out. She closed the door with more force than necessary. Darius laughed. "Your guard dog has an attitude." My employee was doing her job. "Relax, I'm here to fix things." People like Darius always announce destruction as a favor. He dropped a thick envelope onto my desk. It slid across the polished surface and stopped near my keyboard. "What is that?" I asked, though I already suspected. "Paperwork?" "You'll need to be more specific." He unbuttoned his coat and sat without being invited. "Margot is transferring Hawthorne Lane to me and Sabrina. We're getting things in order before renovations start. This document confirms you waive any future inheritance claim or interest you think you might have." I looked at the envelope. "Your legal team drafted this?" He smiled. "That surprises you?" "A little. It shouldn't. I told you, Claire. You're not the only person who understands paperwork." I opened the envelope and pulled out the document. Quitclaim deed. Poorly drafted. Sloppy legal description. Margot listed as grantor. Sabrina and Darius as grantees. A second attachment for me to sign, purporting to release any inheritance claim, future objection, emotional grievance, and several other phrases that sounded like they had been copied from 3 different internet templates and shaken in a bag. It was useless in more ways than one. Margot no longer owned the house. A quit-claim deed transfers whatever interest the grantor has. If the grantor has nothing, the grantee receives nothing. A person cannot transfer ownership of a car they sold last week just because they still have an old photograph of it in the driveway. I said none of that. Darius watched my face, hungry for distress. I gave him none. "This is what you came here for?" I asked. "I came here to give you an opportunity to be graceful." "Did you? You embarrassed yourself on Thanksgiving. You upset your mother. You upset Sabrina. You created a scene in front of the children. But we are willing to move forward if you accept reality." Reality. From Darius. I almost admired the audacity. He leaned forward. "The house is staying with the family members who appreciate it. And that would be you. That would be Sabrina. And as her husband, yes, me." "I see." His eyes narrowed. "You know what your problem is? You don't know how to be soft. You think being hard makes you powerful. But it just makes you lonely. Men don't want to come home to a woman who acts like an IRS notice." I folded the document neatly. He continued, mistaking silence for injury. "Sabrina understands partnership. She supports vision. You? You nickel and dime family over tiny charges and wonder why everyone prefers her. Are you finished?" "No. If you refuse to sign, Margot is done with you. Sabrina is done with you. And those kids?" He pointed vaguely toward the framed photo of Noah and Lily on my bookshelf. "They don't need to be around this kind of bitterness. You'll cut them off from the family forever because you can't stand not being chosen." There it was, the threat he thought would work. My children, the same children he watched get thrown into a blizzard. I looked at him for a long second. "Did you practice that?" His jaw tightened. Then he pulled out his phone and placed it on my desk, screen up. "I'm going to record this." "Are you?" "Yes. So you can't claim later that you were pressured." Something almost like amusement moved through me. Darius was so committed to sounding powerful that he occasionally became useful. "That is actually a wonderful idea," I said. He hesitated. He had expected resistance. I nodded toward the phone. Go ahead. He hit record. I sat straighter, looked at the phone, and spoke clearly. This is Claire Whitman. Today is Monday, November 27th. Darius Cole came to my office without an appointment and presented documents he says relate to Hawthorne Lane. He has stated that he believes these documents transfer or release any claim he believes I may have. He has also stated that my refusal would result in my children being cut off from the family. He is not threatening physical harm, and I am signing the document he brought because he has requested my signature. Darius's smile faltered slightly. He knew enough to sense that I had not said what he wanted, but not enough to understand why it mattered. Fine, he said. Sign. I signed. No hesitation. The pen moved across the paper smoothly. Claire Whitman, same signature my mother had once forged. This time, mine meant exactly what I intended it to mean. Darius looked almost disappointed by how easy it was. Bullies prefer resistance because it gives them something to crush. That's it? He asked. That's it. He gathered the papers, smugness returning. See, was that so hard? No. He stood, buttoned his coat, and leaned over my desk slightly. You should have learned earlier, Claire. People like you always think being right means you win. I looked up at him. And people like you always think paper means power. He smiled because he thought I was conceding. After he left, Harper came in immediately. Do you want me to call building security next time? She asked. Next time, I said, he will bring security to himself. Her eyebrows rose. Also, I added, please save the hallway and reception camera footage from the last 20 minutes. Already downloaded? That was why I liked Harper. The country club lunch happened 2 days later. Margot summoned me with a text that said, Oak Ridge, noon, we need to speak like adults. When someone like my mother says like adults, she usually means in public where she expects you to behave better than she does. I considered not going. Then I thought about Vivian Cross and Celeste Harrington, my mother's favorite social mirrors, and knew exactly why she had chosen Oak Ridge. She did not want reconciliation. She wanted an audience. So I went. Oak Ridge Country Club smelled like money trying not to sweat. Dark wood, leather chairs, white tablecloths, servers trained to appear before anyone had to look around. My mother sat near the windows in a cream sweater set, pearls at her throat, Vivian on one side and Celeste on the other. Vivian had silver hair, shaped into a helmet, and a face that moved only in approved directions. Celeste was thinner, sharper, and always looked like she was mentally pricing other women's handbags. Claire, Margot said when I arrived, you're late. I'm on time. She smiled tightly. Sit. I sat. Vivian touched my hand with fake warmth. Your mother tells us there have been some family tensions. That is one way to describe throwing children into a snowstorm. Margot's eyes flashed. We are not here to exaggerate. Celeste made a small, uncomfortable sound and lifted her water glass. Margot recovered quickly. I invited you because I wanted you to hear this from me. I have decided to give Hawthorne Lane to Sabrina and Darius. Vivian placed a hand on her chest. Margot, how generous. Celeste nodded. Keeping it in the family, that is so important. My mother looked at me like she expected collapse. I picked up my menu. The salmon looks good. Her smile thinned. Did you hear me? Yes. And I hope Sabrina enjoys whatever you think you are giving her. Vivian blinked. Margot leaned forward. You are not going to make this ugly. I did not make this family ugly. Claire, you stole my college fund for Sabrina's wedding, I said evenly. Now you're performing generosity with a house you could not afford to keep. There is a pattern. Vivian's mouth opened. Celeste suddenly became very interested in her napkin. Margot's face went rigid. That was decades ago. It was 18 years ago. You managed fine. That does not make it less stolen. Sabrina needed a proper wedding. I looked at Vivian and Celeste, then back at my mother. Only in this family is theft called generosity. The table froze. Margot's voice dropped. Do not embarrass me. There it was. Not, do not lie. Not that is unfair. Do not embarrass me. My mother had never feared being cruel. She feared being seen? I stood. Then stop giving me accurate things to say. I left before lunch was ordered. By the time I returned to my office, Sabrina had posted on Instagram a photo of the Hawthorne Lane foyer with the staircase garland already installed. Caption: New home, new era, new money. Another post came an hour later, her hand with a champagne flute in front of the fireplace. Blessed to have a mother who believes in legacy. I screenshotted both. I did not comment. A younger version of me would have tried to correct the record. She would have typed paragraphs, attached documents, explained legal facts to people committed to misunderstanding her. She would have believed truth needed to be defended loudly to count. I had learned better. Truth does not become stronger because you shout it early. Sometimes you let people build a stage on top of it. Then you pull the curtain. Before I canceled anything, I called Ethan again. I need to ask about the utilities, I said. Which utilities? Water, gas, electric? They are still in my name. I pay them. For Hawthorne Lane. He was quiet for a second in the way attorneys are quiet when they are choosing words carefully. You personally hold the accounts? Yes. And you're the one paying? Yes. You can close accounts that are in your name. You cannot damage the property. You should not tamper with meters, lines, locks, or access. Do not shut anything off manually. Let the utility providers handle their own procedures. The occupants can open accounts in their own names if they qualify. They won't qualify. That is not your legal problem. I wrote that down. Not your legal problem. It felt unnatural. My whole life had been organized around making my mother's problems mine before they became visible. Ethan continued. Do not change the locks until the writ is executed. Do not remove their possessions yourself. Do not engage in threats. Keep records of every communication. I always do. I know, he said. That is why this case is clean. After we hung up, I logged into the water account first. The payment history loaded slowly. Years of charges, years of auto pay, years of my secondary account covering the basic functions of a house my mother used to humiliate me. I scrolled through dates and amounts, and each line felt like a small confession of how long I had confused peace with payment. Gas was next. Then electricity. I canceled auto pay. I scheduled termination according to each provider's rules. Friday at 5 p.m. was the earliest clean cutoff for the main services. I did not yell. I did not send a warning text. I did not write, "Let's see how you like being cold." I simply stopped financing the people who had been destroying me. Then I updated insurance. The old policy tied to Margot's occupancy and outdated ownership needed to be replaced. I opened a proper property policy under my LLC, documented the current known condition, and sent everything to Ethan for the file. This matters because revenge stories often make legal revenge sound like chaos. Mine was paperwork. Mine was hold times and policy numbers and certified mail. Mine was making sure that when the consequences arrived, they could not be dismissed as emotion. Friday came cold and bright. Sabrina and Darius had planned what they called a pre-renovation celebration. Not the official housewarming yet. That was scheduled for Saturday evening with Vivian, Celeste, Darius's supposed investors, Sabrina's friends, and half of Margot's country club circle. Friday was supposed to be smaller. Caterers, champagne, a few social media teasers, a contractor walkthrough, and Sabrina filming herself talking about transformation. I knew because she posted everything. At 4:47 p.m., Sabrina uploaded a video from the kitchen wearing a white sweater, gold earrings, and a smile wide enough to hide structural panic. "Last weekend in this outdated kitchen," she said to the camera. "I cannot wait to show you all what Darius and I are creating here. This house has been in my family forever, and now we get to bring it into a new era." Behind her, I could see the old cabinets, the marble island my mother had refinished instead of paying taxes, and a row of champagne glasses waiting beside a floral arrangement. At 4:58, Margot texted me a photo of the dining room. No caption, just the table set again, this time with black and gold plates. I think she wanted me to feel excluded. Instead, I checked the time. At 5 p.m., I was in my apartment seasoning chicken thighs while Lily colored at the kitchen table, and Noah worked on a school project about the water cycle. My phone lit up at 5:06. Margot, the power's out. Call the electric company. At 5:08. Sabrina, why isn't the water working? At 5:09. Darius, turn it back on, you psycho. I set the phone face down and slid the chicken into the oven. Who is texting? Noah asked. No one important. He looked up. Noah had always been too perceptive. Is it Grandma? I wiped my hands on a towel. Yes. His shoulders tightened. Hey, I said gently, you are not responsible for grown-up problems. He looked down at his poster. Are we going back there? Lily stopped coloring. I crouched beside the table. Not unless I know you are safe. Lily's lower lip trembled slightly. Grandma was scary. I know. She said she didn't care. I swallowed. I heard, do we have to forgive her? That question came from somewhere deeper than 6 years old. No, I said. Not right now. Maybe not ever. Forgiveness is not something people get to demand from you after they hurt you. Noah watched me carefully. But you always say we should be kind. Kind does not mean letting people hurt you. They both got quiet, absorbing that. I wish someone had told me the same thing when I was their age. That night, our apartment was warm. The oven filled the kitchen with the smell of roasted chicken, garlic, and potatoes. Lily spilled milk and cried because she was still raw from Thanksgiving. And instead of snapping, I handed her a towel and told her accidents were not emergencies. Noah showed me his water cycle diagram. We ate at our small round table with mismatched placemats and a candle Lily insisted on lighting because it made dinner fancy. My phone kept buzzing. Margot called twice. Sabrina sent 7 texts. Darius sent one message so ugly, I forwarded it to Ethan without reading it twice. At Hawthorne Lane, the chandelier had gone dark. The music cut. The heat stopped. The sinks stopped running. Every neighboring house still had power, which meant Margot could not even convincingly blame the storm. Guests whispered. Someone left early. Someone else asked if the Bellamy's were having financial trouble. Sabrina stopped live streaming. That was the first crack in the performance. But pride is a stubborn thing. On Monday morning, Darius tried to open a new electric account. I know, because Sabrina later screamed enough details in a voicemail for me to reconstruct the entire scene. He apparently put the call on speaker, pacing around the freezing kitchen while Sabrina and Margot watched. He used his business voice, the one with extra bass. He told the utility representative he needed immediate service restoration for a family property undergoing high-value renovations. Then came the credit check. Darius's confidence survived the first few questions. It weakened when the representative mentioned collections. It cracked when she said there had been a prior repossession. It collapsed when she explained the deposit required before service could be established. He did not have it. Sabrina's first voicemail came at 9:42. Claire, this is insane. If you did something with the utilities, you need to undo it right now. There are legal consequences for this kind of harassment. I saved it. The second came at 10:13. Why is the electric company asking Darius for a deposit? What did you tell them? Did you sabotage his credit? I saved that too. The third came at 10:28, and that one was mostly crying. Mom is freezing. The pipes are going to burst. This is still our home, no matter what you think. You cannot just abandon family. Abandon. That word from Sabrina would have been funny if it were not so exhausting. Darius texted at 10:45. You're interfering with a property transfer. My attorney will bury you. I forwarded that to Ethan too. Ronan Briggs arrived that afternoon to quote the kitchen renovation. Ronan was a contractor in his late 40s with a shaved head, heavy boots, and the kind of practical bluntness that comes from decades of watching rich people lie about budgets. I had used him once for a client's office build-out and knew he did clean work. Darius, naturally, had contacted him after finding his name through my old referral chain, because people like Darius resent your competence while using your contacts. The house was freezing when Ronan arrived. Darius claimed there was a temporary electrical issue caused by outdated wiring, which was technically creative but not convincing. Sabrina wore a coat indoors and tried to make it look like a fashion choice. Margot kept saying the generator delivery was delayed, though no generator had been ordered yet. Ronan walked the kitchen, took measurements, listened to Darius describe imported stone, custom cabinetry, smart appliances, structural changes, and a wine wall. Then Ronan gave him the number, $45,000 to start, assuming no major surprises behind the walls. $9,000 deposit. Darius did what Darius always did when reality asked for money. He performed. He talked about equity. He talked about the property transfer. He talked about a bridge facility. He talked about how his capital was temporarily allocated elsewhere. Ronan listened, then asked for financing information. That was where Margot made her mistake. She offered to put it under the house she no longer owned. Ronan ran preliminary financing. Margot's credit came back terrible. Tax defaults flagged. Other debts surfaced. Darius's information did not improve things. Sabrina had more store cards than income. The whole fantasy began to look exactly like what it was. 3 broke people standing in a cold kitchen discussing luxury finishes for a house, none of them legally controlled. Ronan noticed something else. In his records, my firm had paid for a prior roof repair consultation 2 years earlier when Margot had once again called me in tears about a leak over the laundry room. So Ronan called my office. Harper patched him through. "Claire," he said, "I'm standing in the Bellamy kitchen with your mother, your sister, and a man using the word escrow like he learned it this morning. Before I go any further, are you involved in this renovation?" "No." "Are you guaranteeing payment?" "No." "Is your firm attached to the property in any way?" I paused. "My LLC owns the property." There was a long silence. Then Ronan said, "That would have been useful information for the gentleman in the shiny shoes to share. He may not know. Does he have authorization to demolish this kitchen?" "No." "Does anyone there?" "No." Ronan exhaled. "Understood." "Ronan," I said, "any demolition without written authorization from my LLC would be damage to my property." That is exactly what I needed to know. According to the voicemail Sabrina left me 20 minutes later, Ronan turned around in that freezing kitchen and told Darius in front of Margot and Sabrina that he was pulling his crew, canceling the quote, and not touching a single cabinet until the legal owner authorized work and a deposit cleared. Darius called him unprofessional. Ronan called him a fraud. I wish I had seen it. By then, any rational person would have stopped. They had no utilities, no renovation crew, no financing, no proof of ownership, no ability to open accounts without deposits they could not pay. The obvious move would have been to cancel Saturday's housewarming, call a lawyer, read the documents, and deal with reality. But Margot Bellamy had never chosen reality when an audience was available. Sabrina could not cancel because she had already posted too much. Her friends had already commented. Vivian and Celeste had already told people. Darius could not cancel because his entire identity depended on appearing unstoppable. Margot could not cancel because canceling would invite questions, and questions were the one thing her life could not survive. So they adapted the performance. They rented industrial generators. They ordered portable heaters. They bought more candles. They told guests the house was undergoing early-stage renovation preparation, and that the temporary roughness was part of the charm. Sabrina posted a close-up of champagne flutes beside a candle and captioned it, "Luxury is a mindset." I screenshotted that too. On Friday night, after the children were asleep, I sat at my kitchen table with a folder full of documents and listened to the hum of my refrigerator. The apartment was small, but it was paid for. The heat worked, the lights worked. No one inside it was pretending to be richer than they were. No one had to earn safety by staying slint. I opened the folder. Tax lien purchase documents, certified notices, redemption deadline, foreclosure filing, final order, recorded deed, screenshots of Darius's texts, Screenshots of Sabrina's posts, notes about the Thanksgiving incident, utility account confirmations, insurance policy, everything clean, everything dated. People like my mother call documentation cold because it does not respond to tears. I ran my fingers over the edge of the recorded deed and waited for guilt. It came, but weaker than before. Guilt said, "She is your mother." Memory answered, "She looked at your children freezing and said she did not care." Guilt said, "This will humiliate her." Memory answered, "She built a life where humiliation mattered more than harm." Guilt said, "Family." Memory answered, "Safety." That was the night I understood that my revenge was not really about taking the house. I did not want the chandelier. I did not want the dining room table or the staircase garland or the cursed silver trays. I wanted the pattern to end. I wanted my children to never stand on that porch again wondering why love had a lock on it. The next morning, my mother came to my apartment. I had just finished making pancakes. Lily was still in pajamas, sitting cross-legged on the couch with syrup on her chin. Noah was building something complicated out of magnetic tiles. When the doorbell rang, both children froze. That told me everything. I checked the peephole and saw Margot in a camel coat with a fur-trimmed hood, one hand pressed against her chest like she had climbed a mountain instead of taken an elevator. I opened the door but did not invite her in. Her eyes flicked past me toward the children, then back to my face. "We need to talk." "No," she blinked. "Claire, the kids are here." "I am aware. And they do not need another scene." Her mouth tightened. She lowered her voice. "The kitchen is half taken apart. Ronan said he did not perform demolition. Some prep work was started." "By whom?" "That is not the point." "It usually is." She took a breath, visibly rearranging herself into victim mode. "The utilities are still off. The house is freezing. Sabrina is beside herself. Darius has people coming tonight. Important people. We cannot cancel." "Then don't." Her eyes sharpened at my tone. "I need $10,000. There it was. No apology, no acknowledgement, no concern for Noah or Lily, just the invoice beneath the performance. "For what?" I asked. "Deposits? Generator rental? Emergency service? Some temporary accounts? It is a short-term family loan." "No." She stared at me like the word had slapped her. "What did you say?" "No." "Claire, do not be childish. I am not giving you money." Her voice dropped. "After everything you have done, you owe me help fixing it. I did not create your credit score. I did not ignore your taxes. I did not tell Darius to plan renovations on a house he does not own." Her face changed. There was a flicker. Tiny, but there. She knew something. Maybe not the whole legal picture, but enough to know there was a hole under her feet. "What are you talking about?" she asked. I looked at her for a long moment. Old Claire would have explained. Old Claire would have pulled out documents to prove she was not cruel. Old Claire would have tried to make her mother understand before consequences arrived. New Claire said, "Ask your attorney." She laughed sharply. "You think you are so smart." "No," I said. "I think I finally stopped being stupid." Her eyes went flat. "You always wanted this," she said. "You always wanted to punish Sabrina because people love her. Because she is easy to love and you are not. You want to see us embarrassed. You want to see me beg." "I do not want to see you at all." That one landed. For a second, she looked almost hurt. Then rage saved her from reflection. "Fine," she hissed. "We will host the party with generators and candles. I will stand in that house tonight in front of everyone who matters, and I will sign it to Sabrina and Darius publicly. You will not ruin this family just because you are bitter." I held the door. "You already ruined it," I said. "I just stopped paying for the illusion." She lifted her hand like she might slap me. Then she remembered where she was. My apartment hallway had neighbors, cameras, witnesses. Margot never liked cruelty without control. She lowered her hand, smiled with pure hatred, and said, "You will regret this." Then she turned and walked away. I closed the door quietly. Behind me, Noah asked, "Is she gone?" I turned. Both children were standing in the living room now. Lily had syrup on her pajama sleeve. Noah's magnetic tiles lay forgotten on the rug. Yes, I said. She's gone, Lily whispered. Are we in trouble? I crossed the room and knelt in front of them. No, you are not in trouble, and I need you both to hear me. Grandma's feelings are not your responsibility. Aunt Sabrina's feelings are not your responsibility. Uncle Darius's anger is not your responsibility. Noah looked at me carefully. Are they your responsibility? For a moment, I could not speak. Then I said, no, not anymore. That afternoon, the FedEx envelope arrived. I knew what it was before I opened it. Ethan had told me to expect original stamped copies. Still, my hand slowed when I slid my finger under the cardboard flap. Inside were the final recorded deed, certified copies of the court order, and the writ of possession. The documents did not glow. They did not make a sound. They were just paper, heavy, official, unemotional paper. But my whole childhood shifted when I touched them. For most of my life, Hawthorne Lane had been the place where my mother controlled the door. She decided who entered, who apologized, who belonged, who was punished with exile. She made the house feel like the physical body of the family, and herself the only heart inside it. Now the paper said otherwise. The house was not love. The house was not legacy. The house was an asset with a legal owner. And the owner was my LLC. I called Ethan first. He reviewed the next steps and confirmed the writ was ready for execution. Because the occupants had refused to vacate voluntarily, and because there had already been hostility, he advised coordinating through the sheriff's civil division. So I called. Deputy Calvin Rhodes had the kind of voice that did not waste motion. He asked direct questions: property address, owner name, occupants, any weapons known, any threats, any large animals, any expected gathering. Yes, I said. There may be a large gathering tonight. What kind of gathering? A housewarming party. There was a pause. For a property they no longer own? Yes. Another pause, slightly longer. Understood. I explained the Thanksgiving incident. Not dramatically, just facts. Hostile occupants. Children removed into severe weather. Threatening messages from Darius. Public event planned with guests. Potential for escalation. Deputy Rhodes scheduled execution for 7 p.m. Bring original documents and identification, he said. Do not enter ahead of us if you believe the situation may become volatile. I looked at the folder on my table. Understood. After I hung up, I sat alone for a few minutes. This is the part people do not imagine in revenge stories. The quiet before. The grief. The tiny, irrational wish that someone will stop you by becoming decent at the last second. I wanted my mother to call and say she was sorry. Not because it would change the legal outcome. It would not. Too much had happened. Too many deadlines had passed. Too much harm had been done. But some childish part of me still wanted proof that there was a mother buried somewhere beneath Margot Bellamy. She did not call. Sabrina posted instead. A video of the front door opening onto candlelight. Tonight we celebrate legacy, love, and the future. Some people bring darkness. We make our own light. I watched it twice. Then I saved it. By 6:30 p.m., I was parked down the street from Hawthorne Lane with the folder on the passenger seat and my phone face down in the cup holder. The house looked beautiful from a distance. That was the sick genius of it. Snow softened the lawn. Candlelight glowed through the tall windows. Luxury cars lined both sides of the street. A valet stand had been set up near the driveway because Margot would rather pay for valet than pay taxes. Industrial generators growled along the side yard, half hidden behind rented lattice screens. Thick orange extension cords snaked through a basement window and around the side porch. Portable heaters glowed faintly near the entry. From 50 feet away, it looked like wealth. From 10 feet away, it looked like desperation with good lighting. Sabrina's live stream began at 6:41. I watched from my car. She wore a gold dress that shimmered every time she moved. Her hair was swept over one shoulder. Her makeup was flawless. Behind her, the foyer candles flickered dramatically. Welcome to our new chapter, Shaked, she told the camera. This house has held generations of memories, and tonight Darius and I are honored to step into our future. She angled the camera carefully to avoid the exposed section of kitchen wall visible through the dining room doorway. Comments floated up the screen. So gorgeous. Legacy Queen, your mom is amazing. House tour, please. Sabrina laughed and said, full tour after renovations. Right now we're in transition, but honestly, I love the romance of candlelight. I could hear the generator hum under her voice. At 6:49, Margot appeared on the live stream in a deep green velvet gown, pearls at her throat, silver hair styled perfectly. Vivian Cross and Celeste Harrington flanked her like social gargoyles. Margot lifted a champagne flute. There is no greater joy for a mother than knowing the family home will continue through the daughter who truly understands what family means. People applauded. In my car, I felt nothing at first. Then I felt Lily's small body shaking against mine in the snow. I felt Noah reaching for my coat on the icy porch. I heard my mother say, I do not care. At 6:55, Darius took the stage. Not a literal stage, of course. Darius could turn any slightly elevated patch of floor into one. He stood in the wide opening between the dining room and the half-demolished kitchen with a glass in one hand and folded papers in the other. The quit-claim deed. He clinked the glass with a knife. The room quieted. Even through the live stream, his voice carried that oily confidence I had come to associate with unpaid bills. Thank you all for being here, he said. Tonight is about legacy. It's about vision. It's about taking something historic and building it into something even greater. Sabrina and I believe in family, in real estate, in ownership, in creating an empire that lasts. I almost laughed at ownership. He continued. Now, not everyone believed in this transition. Some people tried to block it. Some people tried to bring negativity, bitterness, and legal confusion into what should have been a beautiful family moment. Margot lowered her eyes dramatically. Sabrina touched his arm. Darius lifted the papers. But as of this week, he said, smiling directly toward the camera now, all objections have been surrendered. We have signed documents. We have transfer paperwork. We have proof that no one can take this house from us now. Guests applauded. The live stream comments exploded with hearts. No one can take this house from us now. I looked at the folder on the passenger seat. At 6:59, headlights turned the corner behind me. 2 patrol vehicles pulled up quietly. No sirens, no drama. Deputy Rhodes stepped out of the first one. He was broad-shouldered, mid-40s, with a calm expression and a clipboard. Another deputy stepped out behind him. I got out of my car. The cold hit my face, but this time I had chosen it. Deputy Rhodes reviewed my identification, the deed, the writ, and the court-stamped documents under the glow of his flashlight. He took his time. I appreciated that. Nothing about this needed haste. Haste belonged to people like Darius. Finally, he handed the folder back. Everything is in order, he said. I nodded. Stay beside or slightly behind us until we assess the room, he added. Understood. We walked up the driveway. The generators were louder near the house. I could hear music inside, laughter, the bright clink of glasses. Darius's voice swelling again as he talked about empire and destiny and people who think small. My shoes touched the first porch step. I looked down. The snow was fresh, but I could still see it in memory. Lily's coat landing near the planter. Noah slipping. My own breath shaking in the dark. The porch did not scare me anymore. At the top, Deputy Rhodes reached toward the bell. I said, "Wait." He glanced at me. I looked at the brass handle. For years, that door had opened or closed according to Margot's moods. It had admitted me when I was useful and expelled me when I told the truth. It had been slammed in my children's faces while snow filled their hair. I stepped forward and turned the handle. It opened. Cold air swept into the foyer. Candles flickered. Several flames went out. The nearest guests turned first, then the room behind them. Faces shifted from irritation to confusion to recognition. Sabrina's live stream phone was still pointed toward the foyer for 3 perfect seconds. Someone online commented, "Are those cops?" Then Sabrina lowered the phone. Darius was still standing in the dining room archway, holding the worthless deed like a trophy. My mother saw me and opened her mouth. For once, I spoke first. "Hello, Mom." They had no heat, no water, no money, no legal ownership, and no idea that the sheriff's civil division already had my name on the paperwork. But they still had champagne, candles, and pride, so they planned the party anyway. For 1 perfect second, nobody moved. The house was full of people who had come to watch my mother perform generosity, my sister perform wealth, and Darius perform ownership. They were standing in candlelight with champagne in their hands, wearing velvet, silk, diamonds, watches, polished shoes, and expressions that had been trained for judgment. They knew how to look impressed. They knew how to look sympathetic. They knew how to look away from anything messy. But they did not know how to look at two sheriff's deputies standing in the foyer of a housewarming party. My mother recovered first, of course. Margot Bellamy did not survive 62 years of lies by freezing in public. Her face changed so quickly I might have admired it if I had not been raised under it. Shock became outrage. Outrage became wounded dignity. Wounded dignity became command. "What is this?" she demanded. Deputy Rhodes held up one hand, calm and flat. "Ma'am, lower your voice." That made several people in the room inhale at once. I do not think anyone at Oak Ridge Country Club had ever told my mother to lower her voice and survive socially. Margot turned on him like he was hired help who had forgotten his place. "This is a private family event. My daughter is trespassing. I want her removed." Darius took 2 steps forward, still holding the papers he had been waving around moments earlier. His smile had not fully disappeared yet. Men like Darius are so used to bluffing through consequences that the first few seconds of reality often look like opportunity to them. "Officer," he said, using the voice he probably used when trying to get restaurant managers to comp dessert. "There's been a misunderstanding." "Deputy?" Rhodes corrected. Darius blinked. "Excuse me? Deputy?" A few guests shifted. Someone near the dining room whispered, "Oh my God." Darius forced a laugh. "Deputy then. My sister-in-law has been unstable for a while. There is a family dispute, but this is private property, and she has no right to enter with police and terrorize guests." I stood quietly beside Deputy Rhodes. I had promised myself I would not rush. My family thrived on dragging me into emotional mud, then pointing at the stains. Tonight, I had documents. I did not need volume. Margot pointed at me with a trembling finger. "She has always been jealous of her sister. Always. This is exactly what I warned everyone about." Vivian Cross had one hand against her necklace. Celeste Harrington stood slightly behind her, eyes moving between me and the deputies with the hungry horror of a woman who knew she was witnessing gossip that would feed a month of lunches. Sabrina stepped beside Darius. Up close, the gold dress was even more absurd against the half-demolished kitchen behind her. She looked beautiful and terrified and furious all at once. "Claire," she hissed, "you are humiliating yourself." I looked at her. "Am I?" Darius lifted the document. "I have paperwork." That sentence seemed to comfort him. He said it louder. "I have paperwork." Claire signed away her claims. Margot transferred the house. Sabrina and I are the rightful owners, and this is harassment. Deputy Rhodes turned his head slightly toward me. "Is that the document he referenced earlier?" "Yes." Darius thrust the pages toward him. "Look! Her signature is right there." Deputy Rhodes accepted the papers without expression. He read the first page, then the second. Then he looked at the notary section, the legal description, the signature block. The room had become so quiet that the generator hum outside sounded like an animal growling under the floorboards. Darius smirked at me while the deputy read. He still believed the paper was a shield. That was the thing about Darius. He thought legal documents were props, like watches or cars. He did not understand that paper only has power when reality stands behind it. Deputy Rhodes lowered the document. "Sir," he said, "this is a quitclaim deed." Darius's smile widened with relief. "Exactly! That means it transfers whatever interest the grantor has." "Exactly," Darius repeated, but softer this time. Deputy Rhodes looked at the top page again. "The grantor listed here is Marjorie Bellamy." "My mother-in-law," Darius said. "Does Marjorie Bellamy currently own this property?" Margot snapped. "Of course I do." Deputy Rhodes did not look at her. He looked at me. "Ms. Whitman?" I opened the folder in my hands. It is strange, the weight of paper when it carries the end of a family myth. The folder was not heavy, but my arms felt the years inside it. The bakery shifts, the drained college account, the utility bills, the text messages. Noah's question from the back seat, Lily's fear. Every time I had swallowed the truth to keep peace with people who had never once been peaceful with me, I stepped forward. "My mother failed to pay property taxes on this house for 3 years," I said. Margot gasped. "Claire." I did not look at her. By February, the amount owed was $36,000, including penalties and fees. She called me in a panic because the county was moving toward foreclosure. Vivian's mouth dropped slightly. Celeste's eyes sharpened. This was the kind of detail social women pretended not to want and remembered forever. My mother's voice shook. "This is private." "No," I said. "Private was when you received the first notice. Private was when you received the second. Private was when Ethan Park's office sent certified mail. You made it public when you threw a party in a house you no longer own." The room seemed to tilt. Darius frowned. "What does that mean?" I looked at him then. "It means I did not gift her the money. My LLC purchased the tax lien. Margot had a legal redemption period to pay it back. She ignored every notice. She did not redeem. She did not challenge the foreclosure. The court finalized the action. The deed was recorded." I pulled out the certified copy and handed it to Deputy Rhodes. "My LLC owns Hawthorne Lane." Sabrina laughed once. It was high and thin. "No." That was all she had? "No." A child's first defense against reality. Margot moved toward the deputy. "This is impossible. She is twisting things. She helped me. She said she was helping me." "I was helping you," I said. "Legally. With paperwork. With deadlines. With every chance to fix what you ignored. You knew I did not understand those documents. You understood the word foreclosure." Her face changed. Her eyes flashed with hatred because she knew I was right. Darius grabbed the quitclaim deed back from the deputy's hand. No. This overrides that. This is more recent. Claire signed it. Margot signed it." I almost felt sorry for how little he understood, but only almost. "Darius," I said, "a quitclaim deed from someone who owns nothing transfers nothing." His jaw worked. I stepped closer. Not enough to threaten, just enough that he had to hear me without the room filling in the blanks. "You did not win a house. You won a worthless piece of paper." The sentence moved through the room like a glass breaking. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Vivian actually sat down. Celeste covered her mouth, but not before I saw the flicker of delight in her eyes. The Bellamy collapse would make her socially rich for weeks. Darius looked at the deed, then at Margot, then at me. "You tricked us." "No," I said. "You ignored documents and trusted arrogance." Sabrina turned on Margot. "Mom?" Margot's face had gone waxy. "I thought she handled it." "She did handle it," Deputy Rhodes said, reviewing the writ now. "Just not the way you assumed." That was the first time I almost laughed. Darius pointed at the deputy. "You cannot just remove us. We live here." Deputy Rhodes looked up. "The writ of possession authorizes removal of occupants from this property." "There are guests here," Darius said. "They will need to leave." "This is a private event." "This is private property," Deputy Rhodes said. "Owned by the entity listed in this court order. Ms. Whitman is the authorized representative. If she does not permit people to remain, they cannot remain." Everyone looked at me. It is hard to explain what that felt like. For most of my life, rooms had turned toward me only when they wanted something. Fix this, pay that, apologize, be reasonable. Be quiet, make it easier. I was used to attention as demand. This attention was different. This was authority. Deputy Rhodes asked, Miss Whitman, do you consent to the current occupants and guests remaining on the property? My mother stared at me. Sabrina's mouth trembled. Darius looked like he wanted to tear the folder out of my hands. I thought of Lily in her green dress, snow in her hair, asking if she was bad. No, I said, I do not. The room erupted. Margot screamed my name. Sabrina started crying. Darius cursed. Guests began moving at once, the way people move when status turns contagious in the wrong direction. No one wanted to be seen as part of the disaster. No one wanted to be the last person holding champagne in a house the sheriff had just called private property. Deputy Rhodes raised his voice, not shouting, but firm enough to cut through the panic. Everyone who is not an occupant needs to leave the property now. Occupants will be given time to collect personal belongings. Do not remove fixtures, appliances, furniture not clearly personal, or anything attached to the home. Anyone who refuses to comply may be subject to arrest for trespassing or obstruction. A woman near the fireplace set her glass down so fast, champagne sloshed onto the mantel. Two men in expensive coats headed for the side hallway, then changed direction when they saw the second deputy there. Someone muttered, I knew something was off. Someone else said, was this still live? Sabrina made a strangled sound and grabbed for her phone. The live stream had ended, but not quickly enough. Later, I would learn that the words trespassing on private property had been heard by at least 200 viewers before Sabrina cut the feed. By midnight, a screen recording was circulating through the Oak Ridge Wives group chat. By Sunday morning, women who had kissed my mother's cheek at fundraisers were sending each other the clip with messages like, "Can you believe this?" And I always wondered about the money. That was not my doing. That was the danger of building a life for an audience. Sometimes the audience keeps watching. Margot came toward me, but Deputy Rhodes stepped between us. Ma'am, he said, do not approach her. She is my daughter. That does not change my instruction. My mother looked genuinely offended, as if law enforcement had failed to recognize the sacred hierarchy of her living room. I want my attorney, she said. You may call your attorney. Darius had already pulled out his phone. His fingers fumbled slightly. He stepped toward the dining room for privacy, but the room had no privacy left. Richard, he barked when someone answered. We need an emergency injunction, now. There are deputies here trying to remove us from Hawthorne Lane. A pause. No, listen to me. There's some tax lien nonsense. Claire manipulated Margot into signing something, and now she's claiming an LLC owns the house. Another pause. Darius turned away, but his voice rose. Yes, a judge signed something, but whatever Richard said next drained the color from his face. No, that cannot be right. The room was quiet enough to hear the lawyer's voice faintly through the phone, though not the words. Darius listened, shoulders stiff. Then he snapped, So what am I paying you for? Another pause. Darius ended the call. Sabrina stared at him. What did he say? He said he needs to review. That is not what he said. Sabrina, what did he say? Darius looked at me with hatred hot enough to warm the whole dead house. He said the order is probably final. Sabrina's champagne flute slipped from her hand. It hit the floor and shattered. Champagne splashed across the hardwood and the hem of her gold dress. For a second, she just stared down at the stain spreading through the fabric, like she could not understand how something so ugly had touched something so expensive. Then she turned on Margot. You said this was handled. Margot clutched her pearls. Actually clutched them. I thought it was. You said the house was ours. It was supposed to be. Supposed to be. Sabrina's voice cracked. We bought the Tesla because Darius said the equity would support the financing. Darius snapped, Do not bring the car into this. You said we had assets. We did. No, We had my mother's fantasy and your mouth." That got a low murmur from the remaining guests. Darius's eyes flashed. "Careful." "No, you be careful," Sabrina screamed. "You told everyone we were renovating. You told everyone you had investors. You told everyone this house was the beginning of our empire. You were happy enough posting about it because you said it was true." Margot turned to me, desperate now, but still angry. "Look what you are doing!" I shook my head. "No, look what the truth is doing." Deputy Rhodes gave them 30 minutes. Personal items only. The phrase personal items became its own battlefield. Darius tried to claim a chandelier had been purchased by him, which was absurd because that chandelier had hung in the dining room since I was 12. Sabrina tried to take 2 framed mirrors from the hallway because she said they were emotionally hers. Margot insisted the silver belonged to the family and therefore to her, until I reminded her that the silver had been itemized in the estate and remained with the house after the foreclosure. She called me a thief. Deputy Rhodes told her to keep moving. Guests fled in layers. First the socially cautious, then the curious once they realized there would be no more safe distance. Then the loyal, because loyalty to Margot Bellamy had always depended on favorable lighting. Vivian left without hugging my mother. Celeste squeezed Margot's shoulder in a way that looked sympathetic from across the room but gave nothing. Her eyes were already bright with the future retelling. One man slipped out through the back patio and nearly fell on the icy steps. 2 women argued in whispers over whether they should delete photos. The valet attendant stood outside looking confused as luxury cars peeled away from Hawthorne Lane one after another, tires crunching snow, taillights red against the storm. Inside, the house changed as the audience disappeared. Without guests, without music, without staged laughter, it looked exactly like what it was: cold, half-lit, and desperate. Extension cords ran like veins across the floor. Portable heaters clicked uselessly. The kitchen had plastic sheeting taped near the cabinets. One section of drywall opened in jagged strips. Empty champagne bottles sweated on a side table. Candle wax dripped onto a saucer my mother probably called antique. Sabrina ran upstairs and came down carrying designer clothes in both arms. Darius followed with a suitcase and 2 watch boxes. Margot moved slower, stunned by the fact that no one was stepping in to save her. She kept picking things up and putting them down, as if trying to decide what pieces of her identity were portable. The deputies watched every movement. I stood near the foyer, not blocking, not helping. At one point, Sabrina came down with a framed photo of herself from her first wedding, the one my stolen college fund had helped pay for. She looked at me as she passed, eyes red and swollen. "You must be so proud," she said. "No," I said, "just finished." She flinched like that hurt worse. Darius tried to maintain control until the very end. He barked instructions. He accused Sabrina of wasting time. He told Margot to stop crying. He told Deputy Rhodes he was documenting everything. Deputy Rhodes said, "That is your right," with such indifference that Darius seemed personally wounded. Then Sabrina found the text messages. I do not know what she saw on his phone. Maybe a declined financing notice. Maybe messages to another woman. Maybe creditors. But she was standing near the staircase when she froze, holding his phone in one hand. "What is this?" she asked. Darius turned. "Give me that." "What is this?" "Sabrina, you said the investors were confirmed." He lunged for the phone. She stepped back. "You said the downtown property was closing." "It is complicated." "You said we had money." "We have opportunities." She laughed. It was not pretty. "Opportunities? I married opportunities?" Margot said weakly. "Sabrina, not here." Sabrina turned on her. "Not here? Where, Mom? In the house you lost? At the club that is going to throw you out by breakfast? Where exactly should we discuss the fact that both of you lied to me?" Darius pointed at her. "Do not pretend you are innocent. You spent like a drunken heiress from the day we met. Because you told me we were rich. I told you we were building. You told me I would never have to be ordinary. That sentence hit the room strangely. For the first time that night, I saw my sister clearly, not as the golden child, not as the spoiled woman in a gold dress, as someone my mother had raised to believe ordinary was death. Sabrina had been cruel to me, yes. She had benefited from my losses, yes. She had smiled when my children were thrown out, yes. But she was also standing in a ruined foyer, realizing she had no self beneath the costume. I did not forgive her. Understanding is not forgiveness. But for 1 second, I saw the cage she had mistaken for a throne. Darius scoffed. You were ordinary before me. Sabrina slapped him. The sound cracked through the foyer. Deputy Rhodes stepped forward. Enough! Separate! Darius touched his cheek, stunned. You psycho! Sabrina laughed again, tears streaking her makeup. There it is, the real man. Margot sank onto the bottom stair. Stop! Please stop! No one listened. That may have been the cruelest consequence for my mother. Not losing the house, not losing the guests, losing command. She had spent decades positioning herself as the emotional center of every room, but without money, without ownership, without an audience, even Sabrina and Darius stopped orbiting her. They turned on each other completely. Darius accused Margot of misrepresenting the property. Margot accused Darius of rushing renovations without understanding family sensitivity. Sabrina accused Darius of being broke, and Margot of being stupid. Darius accused Sabrina of draining his accounts with clothes, trips, beauty treatments, and the kind of lifestyle she thought made her valuable. Sabrina screamed that she only married him because he promised wealth. Margot gasped as if love based on appearances was shocking, even though she had trained Sabrina for exactly that. I watched from beside the door. For years, I had thought if I stopped holding the family together, it would fall apart. I was wrong. It had never been together. It had been arranged. At 7:31, Deputy Rhodes announced that their time was up. Margot looked at him like he had spoken a foreign language. But where are we supposed to go? That is not something I can advise you on, ma'am. She looked at me. There it was. The old reflex. The expectation that Claire would solve the emergency because Claire always solved the emergency. I knew that look better than any expression in the world. It had summoned money, labor, forgiveness, silence, and practical help from me for decades. This time, I did nothing. Darius dragged 2 suitcases toward the door. Sabrina had stuffed designer clothes into black garbage bags because there were not enough suitcases for the life she pretended to have. Margot carried a small jewelry case, a winter coat, and a framed photograph of herself and my father at some charity gala where they had looked happier than I ever remembered them being. The 3 of them stepped onto the porch. Snow was falling again. Not as hard as Thanksgiving, but enough. Soft flakes caught in Sabrina's hair and melted on Darius's coat. The generators sputtered along the side yard, their rented strength nearly out of fuel. Guests were gone. Music was gone. Applause was gone. The house behind them stood cold and exposed. I followed to the doorway. The porch light glowed above us. For a second, time folded. I saw Lily's coat in the snow. Noah slipping. My mother in burgundy velvet saying, "Get off my property." Darius mouthing, "You lost." The deadbolt clicking while my children shook in the cold. Now Margot stood on the same porch, clutching her jewelry case, looking smaller than I had ever seen her. Darius was yelling into his phone near the driveway. Sabrina was sobbing beside the Tesla, which I now knew was 1 missed payment away from repossession. The second deputy monitored them from the walkway. Margot turned back to me. "Claire," she said. I did not answer. She climbed 1 step toward me. Deputy Rhodes moved slightly, but I shook my head. I wanted to hear whatever final performance she had left. Her face crumpled. "I am your mother." I said nothing. "You cannot leave family in the cold." The sentence was so perfect, so obscene, that I felt something inside me go still. She reached for my coat. Her fingers closed around the sleeve. "Please let me sleep in the basement. Just tonight. I have nowhere to go." I looked down at her hand. How many times had that hand pointed at me, dismissed me, signed my name, lifted a glass while I paid her gas bill, thrown my daughter's coat into the snow? "I raised you," she said. That was the last card, the oldest one, the one she believed could never be declined. I gently removed her hand from my sleeve. "You taught me exactly how much family mattered," I said, "when you looked at my children freezing on this porch and said you did not care." Her mouth opened. I continued, and my voice stayed calm because the part of me that once needed her to understand had finally died. "You do not get to ask me for the compassion you refuse to show them." Tears spilled down her cheeks. Real ones this time, I think. Panic had burned through the performance and found something human underneath. But humanity that appears only after consequences is not the same as remorse. "Claire, please." "No, I have nowhere." "That is what you created." "You are being cruel." "No," I said. "I am being done." She shook her head like she could reject the whole night by refusing the words. "You cannot throw your own mother out of her house." I looked back into the foyer at the dying candles, the wet footprints, the place where she had once stood warm while my children cried in the snow. Then I looked at her. "You did not throw me out of your house, Mom. You threw yourself out of mine." Her face collapsed. For a moment, I saw the mother I had wanted, not because she appeared, but because her absence finally became undeniable. There was no hidden softness waiting behind the pearls, no secret apology she had been too proud to give, no buried version of Margot Bellamy who would choose me if the stakes got high enough. There was only this woman on my porch, devastated that her own rules had circled back to her. She stepped backward, not toward Sabrina, not toward Darius, just backward, into the snow. I felt grief rise in me, sudden and sharp. Not guilt. Grief. There is a difference. Guilt says you did something wrong. Grief says you finally understand what you never had. Margot turned away. Deputy Rhodes watched her descend the steps. When the driveway was clear, he returned to the porch. "Property is clear. Locks should be changed as soon as possible. Document condition before repairs. Your attorney will advise on remaining property issues." "Thank you," I said. He nodded. "Have a safe night, Ms. Whitman." Safe. The word followed me inside. I closed the door. The deadbolt clicked. That sound had haunted me since Thanksgiving. In my memory, it was the sound of rejection. A mother choosing pride over children. A house becoming a weapon. This time the click sounded different. Not cruel. Final. I stood in the foyer alone for a long time. The house was almost dark. A few candles still burned low, throwing weak light against the walls. Without bodies in it, Hawthorne Lane seemed to exhale. It was not grand anymore. It was tired. The kind of tired old houses become when they have carried too many lies. I used my phone flashlight and walked room to room. In the dining room, champagne had dried sticky on the floor. One of the gold-rimmed plates had cracked near the edge. The floral centerpiece had tipped sideways, white roses spilling across the table like something from a funeral. A linen napkin lay crushed under a chair leg. In the kitchen, plastic sheeting moved slightly in the draft. The exposed drywall looked raw, like the house itself had been opened and left unfinished. Someone had abandoned a charcuterie board on the counter. Brie softened beside untouched figs. A silver knife lay on the floor near a smear of plaster dust. In the living room, the fireplace was cold. Margot's favorite portrait of Sabrina still hung above the mantel. Sabrina at 21, glowing in her wedding dress, the wedding my money had helped buy without my consent. I shined the flashlight on it for a few seconds. Then I turned away. Upstairs, the bedroom smelled like perfume, panic, and old carpet. Margot's room had drawers left open. Sabrina had left a single gold earring on the vanity. In the guest room where Noah and Lily had once slept during weekend visits, there was still a basket of toys in the corner. Cheap toys I had bought and brought over because Margot always forgot children needed something to do besides behave. I stood in that doorway the longest. I thought reclaiming the house would feel like victory. It did not. It felt like walking through the museum of a childhood injury and realizing none of the exhibits could hurt me unless I kept buying tickets. I did not want to live there. That became clear before I even reached the upstairs landing again. I did not want Noah sleeping under that roof. I did not want Lily brushing her teeth in that bathroom. I did not want to cook breakfast in a kitchen where my mother had called theft, generosity, and love obligation. The house was mine legally, but not emotionally. Emotionally, it belonged to a version of me I was finally letting go. I locked up, took photographs of every room for documentation, and drove home. Noah and Lily were asleep when I got back. My neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, who had watched them for the evening, squeezed my hand at the door and did not ask questions. Some people understand pain well enough not to demand the story immediately. I checked on the kids. Noah had fallen asleep with a book open on his chest. Lily had one hand tucked under her cheek, hair spread across the pillow. I stood there in the hallway light and made a promise I did not say out loud. They would never have to earn warmth. They would never have to stand outside a family door begging to be chosen. The aftermath came in pieces. Darius fell first because Darius had been standing on the least amount of truth. The Tesla was repossessed from a motel parking lot 12 days after the housewarming. I know, because Sabrina left me a voicemail at 2 o'clock in the morning screaming that he had stranded her and Margot with 3 garbage bags and no transportation. I did not answer. Former investors, if they had ever truly existed, stopped returning his calls. The downtown commercial property vanished from his vocabulary. The office suite he had bragged about turned out to be a rented mailing address with conference room access by appointment. He had no staff, no fund, no empire. Just debt, charm, and a talent for saying words that made insecure people feel close to money. He filed for divorce, then withdrew, then filed again when Sabrina's credit cards became part of the conversation. He threatened to sue me for emotional damages, business interference, family alienation, and several other phrases that made Ethan laugh for the first and only time I ever heard him laugh on a legal call. "Can he do anything?" I asked. "He can file nonsense," Ethan said. "That is different from having a case." Darius eventually disappeared from our local social ecosystem. Someone said he moved to Arizona. Someone else said Florida. Someone claimed he was selling high-ticket coaching programs about wealth mindset. That sounded exactly fake enough to be true. I did not follow him. There is a kind of freedom in not needing to watch the fall after you have stepped out of the building. Sabrina's fall was quieter, which probably made it worse for her. She had always believed humiliation was something that happened dramatically and then ended. She did not understand daily humiliation, the kind that shows up in declined cards, awkward job interviews, cheap apartments, and former friends pretending not to see you in public. The renovation company sued over materials and emergency scheduling costs tied to the canceled work Darius had tried to authorize. Sabrina called me crying once, saying she had not understood what she was signing. I believed her. I also remembered her standing behind my mother on Thanksgiving looking satisfied while my children were pushed into a blizzard. Both things can be true. She got a job at a discount retail store on the edge of town. Not because retail work is shameful. It is not. Honest work is honest work. But Sabrina had spent her entire life treating ordinary labor like a disease that happened to other people. So standing under fluorescent lights, scanning coupon sheets and clearance sweaters felt to her like exile. One afternoon, months later, Vivian Cross came through her checkout line. Sabrina told me that herself in an email I did not answer. Vivian placed her items on the belt, looked directly at Sabrina's name tag, and then looked away with the smooth brutality of a woman pretending not to recognize someone she had once toasted. That, Sabrina wrote, was when she understood Mom's friends were never friends. I read that sentence 3 times. Then I archived the email, not because I felt nothing, because feeling something did not require reopening the door. Margot's collapse was the ugliest because Image had been her real home long before Hawthorne Lane. For the first week, she stayed with Sabrina at a cheap extended stay motel. Then Sabrina and Darius imploded loudly enough that even shared desperation could not keep them in the same room. Margot moved into a studio apartment in a part of town she had spent years describing as unfortunate. It was not dangerous, just ordinary in a way she found unbearable. Beige walls, coin laundry, window unit air conditioner, no foyer, no staircase, no place for seasonal planters. Oak Ridge terminated her membership after unpaid dues and, I suspect, reputational contamination. Vivian blocked her. Celeste blocked her after first extracting every detail she could. A charity luncheon removed Margot from the guest list, then called it an administrative oversight. When she showed up anyway, wearing pearls and wounded dignity, she was politely escorted aside by a woman half her age holding a clipboard. That one got back to me through Harper, whose cousin worked catering for the event. "Do you want the details?" Harper asked. "No." "You sure?" I paused. "Maybe one detail." She said, "There must be some mistake." And the event coordinator said, "Yes, ma'am, that's what we're correcting." I closed my eyes. That's enough. Margot texted constantly at first. Some messages were rage. "You have destroyed your mother." Some were revision. "I never meant for the children to be cold." Some were bargaining. "Let me stay in one room until I get back on my feet." Some were religious. "God sees what you have done." Some were pure Margot. "People are asking questions, and you need to help me fix the narrative." I did not respond unless Ethan told me to. When she crossed into legal threats, I forwarded the messages. When she tried to send packages for the children, I returned them. When she left voicemails crying that Lily must miss her grandmother, I deleted them after saving copies for documentation. That might sound cold. I know it does. But cold is throwing children into a blizzard. A boundary is closing the door before the next storm gets in. The house itself became a project I wanted finished as quickly as possible. Ethan connected me with a real estate broker who specialized in properties with redevelopment value. The house was damaged, outdated, emotionally poisoned, and sitting on land more valuable than the structure. A developer made an offer faster than I expected, $850,000. When the number came in, I sat at my office desk and stared at it. $850,000. My mother had lost the house trying to avoid a $36,000 tax debt. That is the thing about denial. It does not save you from cost. It adds interest. I accepted the offer. Before closing, I walked through Hawthorne Lane one last time. This time I brought Noah and Lily. I did not want to, at first. Every protective instinct in me said to keep them away forever. But Noah had questions, and Lily had started drawing houses with no doors. My therapist, who I had finally started seeing because revenge does not heal everything, suggested that a safe goodbye might help them understand the house could not hurt them anymore. So, on a clear Saturday morning in spring, we drove to Hawthorne Lane. No snow, no candles, no guests, no Margot. Just a large old house waiting to be emptied of meaning. Noah was quiet as we walked up the porch steps. Lily held my hand tightly. "Is Grandma here?" she whispered. "No." "Is Aunt Sabrina?" "No." "Is anybody mad?" "No, sweetheart." She looked at the door. "Can we leave if I don't like it?" "Immediately?" That seemed to help. I unlocked the door. Inside, the house smelled like dust and cold wood. Most of the furniture had been removed or sold. The rooms echoed. Without Margot's flowers and candles and staged warmth, everything looked smaller. Noah walked into the dining room and stood near the place where he had sat on Thanksgiving. "I hated this room," he said. My heart clenched. "I'm sorry." He shrugged in that way children do when they are trying to protect adults. "It's okay." "No," I said. "It wasn't. And I'm sorry I kept bringing you here." He looked at me, surprised. I knelt so we were closer to eye level. "I thought I was giving you family, but I was bringing you into a place where people were unkind. That was my mistake. I won't make it again." Noah's face changed. He did not cry. He just stepped forward and hugged me hard. Lily tugged my hand. "Can I see the porch?" I hesitated, then nodded. We went back to the front door. She stood just inside, looking out at the porch boards. "That's where my coat was," she said. "Yes!" And Grandma said she didn't care. I swallowed. "Yes." Lily thought about that for a long time. Then she said, "This house is bad." Noah said, "Houses can't be bad." Lily frowned. "This one can." I looked around the foyer at the staircase, the chandelier, the walls that had heard too much. "Maybe houses hold what people put in them," I said. Lily leaned against my leg. "What will happen to it?" "It's going to be torn down." Her eyes widened. "All of it?" "All of it." She considered that. Then she nodded once, satisfied. "Good. Children understand endings better than adults sometimes." A month later, the sale closed. I used part of the money to pay legal costs, taxes, and every practical thing that needed to be handled. Then I opened education trusts for Noah and Lily. The day I signed those documents, I cried harder than I had cried through the entire foreclosure. Not because of the money itself, because my mother had stolen my college fund and called it family. I was taking the proceeds from the house she worshipped and turning them into futures she could not touch. My children would never log into an account and find their escape emptied for someone else's performance. They would never have to beg family for a future. When the trusts were funded, I sat Noah and Lily down at our kitchen table. I did not tell them numbers. Children do not need adult numbers too early. I simply told them that college, trade school, training, whatever path they chose after high school would be supported. Noah blinked. "Even if I want to study animals?" "Yes." "Even if I want to study dinosaurs?" "That is still animals, technically extinct ones, but yes." Lily raised her hand like she was in class. "What if I want to be a baker and a singer and a doctor for cats?" "We will make a very complicated plan." She grinned. Noah looked down at the table. "Did the money come from Grandma's house?" "Yes." He thought about that. "Is that bad?" "No," I said. Sometimes something painful can become something protective if you use it differently. I needed to hear that as much as he did. That summer, I took them to Italy. It sounds extravagant, and maybe it was, but I wanted us to have a memory that had nothing to do with survival. For years, every trip had been budgeted around obligation, visiting family, attending events, showing up where I was expected. I wanted my children to see beauty that did not require them to behave perfectly to deserve it. We started in Rome. Noah fell in love with the Colosseum and asked so many questions about ancient engineering that our tour guide gave him a little booklet. Lily was more impressed by gelato and the fact that some streets looked like storybook roads. She got chocolate on her nose every day and denied it every time. In Florence, we climbed too many stairs, ate pasta in a tiny restaurant with yellow walls, and watched street musicians play violin near a piazza at sunset. Lily danced badly and joyfully. Noah pretended to be embarrassed, then joined her for 10 seconds when he thought no one was watching. On the Amalfi Coast, we spent one afternoon sitting near the water doing absolutely nothing. No crisis, no phone buzzing with Margot's demands, no performance, no hidden bill waiting to become my emergency, just sun on our faces, waves against the rocks, my children arguing over lemon candy. That evening, Lily curled beside me on the balcony of our small hotel room. The sky had turned peach and violet. Noah was inside, already asleep after insisting he was not tired. Lily leaned her head against my arm. Mom? Yes? Are we safe now? I looked out at the water. Safety is a complicated word when you grew up in a house where love could become weather. I could not promise my children a life without pain. No parent can. They would have heartbreaks, disappointments, failures. People would hurt them. The world would be unfair in ways I could not prevent. But I could promise them this. I would not be the first storm. I kissed the top of her head. Yes, I said. We are finally safe. She accepted that with the complete trust children offer when they believe you. Then she said, Can we get gelato tomorrow? I laughed. Yes. Even if Noah says we already had too much? Especially then. She smiled and closed her eyes. When we came home, Hawthorne Lane was gone. The developer sent notice before demolition, though I did not attend. I thought I might want to watch the house come down. I imagined standing across the street as the walls cracked and the roof collapsed, feeling some cinematic release. But when the day came, I took Noah and Lily to the zoo instead. I did not need to watch the house die. I had already stopped living in it. A few weeks later, I drove past the lot by accident after a client meeting nearby. For a second, I did not recognize the street. The columns were gone, the black shutters gone, the porch gone, the dining room where Darius had waved his worthless deed gone, the staircase where Sabrina had cried gone, the door my mother slammed gone. There was only flattened earth behind a construction fence. I pulled over. Not for long, just long enough to look. I expected sadness. I felt some. I expected triumph. I felt less than you might think. Mostly, I felt space. Like something huge and heavy had been removed from the center of my life. And now I had to decide what to plant there. My phone buzzed while I sat there. For a wild second, I thought it might be my mother. It was not. It was Noah's school reminding parents about a science fair deadline. Real life has a way of saving you from drama with logistics. I drove home. People have asked me if I regret what I did. The answer depends on what they mean. Do I regret that my mother ended up in a studio apartment instead of the house she loved? Sometimes. In the abstract. I am not a monster. I understand loss. I understand humiliation. I understand that aging without security is frightening. But do I regret refusing to keep funding her fantasy? Number. Do I regret letting Darius expose himself in front of the same people he wanted to impress? Number. Do I regret not warning Sabrina before she live-streamed her own collapse? Sometimes I wonder if I should. Then I remember her face at Thanksgiving, satisfied while my daughter cried, and the wondering ends. Do I regret buying the tax lien instead of handing my mother another undocumented gift? Never. That decision did not destroy my family. It revealed that my family had been surviving on my willingness to be destroyed quietly. There is a difference. For a long time, I thought blood meant obligation. I thought being a good daughter meant staying available for harm, as long as the person hurting me could say mother afterward. I thought peace meant preventing consequences from reaching people who created them. I thought if I became useful enough, generous enough, forgiving enough, my mother would finally look at me and see a daughter instead of a resource. That was the embarrassing part. I did not want revenge at first. I wanted my mother to love me. But love that requires you to disappear is not love. Love that steals from you and demands gratitude is not love. Love that watches your children freeze and says, I do not care, is not love wearing a bad mood. It is control with family photos on the wall. My mother used to say family was everything. I believe that now, but not the way she meant it. Family is the person who makes sure a child's coat is zipped in the snow. Family is the employee who saves security footage because she knows you may need protection. Family is the neighbor who watches your children without asking for the story before you are ready to tell it. Family is the attorney who says, do not give her money directly because he sees the pattern you are still trying to excuse. Family is the home where a spilled glass of milk is just a spill, not evidence that you are ungrateful. Family is not proven by blood. Family is proven by safety. Margot taught me many things she did not mean to teach me. She taught me that appearances are expensive and truth is cheaper in the long run. She taught me that people who perform wealth often fear exposure more than poverty. She taught me that silence can be survival, but it can also become a prison if you never use it to leave. Most of all, she taught me about doors. For years, I stood on the wrong side of them, waiting to be invited, waiting to be approved, waiting for my mother to open one and say I belonged. On Thanksgiving, she slammed a door in my face and thought she was cutting me out of the family. But some doors do not close on you. They close for you. The night my mother locked that door, she thought she was proving I had no place in her house. What she really did was remind me that my children and I deserved a home where love did not come with a deadbolt. Darius once called me a calculator like it was an insult. Maybe he was right. I did calculate. I calculated the taxes, the lien, the deadlines, the utilities, the insurance, the legal process, and every risk before I made a move. But I also calculated something else. I calculated the cost of staying. And for once in my life, I decided it was too high. They called me cold, but I was not cold. I was finally done burning myself to keep them warm. The night my mother locked that door, she thought she was cutting me out of the family. What she really did was set me free.